Coming out of this COVID period, I think we all realize just how important health is to us. We've got to be physically fit. We have to be emotionally fit. We have to be mentally, emotionally, physically, but we also need to be spiritually fit. And I believe that in the first 7 months of our life, things happen, and there's reasons why we lose our spirituality. But the new God of the world is not the God that we used to know. It's the dollar. And people worship the dollar, and they've lost their spirituality. They've lost their faith. They've lost their morals. But they're looking for a way to get it back.
This podcast is part of the GK Media Studios Creators Network, helping people tell their stories. Become a storyteller today and learn about our podcaster network at gkmediastudios.com.
In today's episode, we have number one Asia's leadership coach. I hope I'm correct saying that. And this is Daniel Tolson. I always introduce my guests from my own perspective, and that's when I heard from Gary, the producer of this podcast, that he got something very interesting going on there, and he got a report, and he was because I'm his health coach, he was very excited to show me, look what I have here in my hands. And I said, that makes a lot of sense because we are vibration. And I said, I want to know more about who actually put that together in a tool and use this as a coach. So that was my glimpse of knowing what you are doing, not knowing you, but hearing about you. And I'm delighted that you accepted my invitation to share your approach of health and leadership with my listeners. So thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's exciting to be here, and I really feel that we've hit a turning point. I felt that the world's been having a big clean out for about a decade now, and I can really see a lot of light at the end of the tunnel. And working with vibrational medicine and realizing that everything's a frequency and it's coming into harmony, I think we're living in very exciting times.
Yes, exactly. And I'm so happy that you touched in that direction, because I was actually, one of my questions was, how do you see what's going on in the world right now? I know this is a cliche at the moment, but I'm very curious. What is your perspective?
If I looked at it from just a purely business perspective, what I personally experienced was when I launched my business in 2010, the first 6 years of the business was really challenging. And then there was a change of government in America. And with that change of government followed 4 of my most prosperous years in business. And the business was building. And then there was another change in government in America in 2020, followed by a pandemic. And what I picked up was the frequency of the world got really low.
Okay.
And I was trying to figure this out, and I was doing a lot of trainings online, and I kept getting sick. And I couldn't work it out. I couldn't figure out why I'm getting sick doing this type of work. And what I realized, that there was a very low energy on the planet, and working online, those energies were now magnified and amplified through the internet.
Yes.
And although I was 5,000 kilometers away from my clients, I would have up to 500 people in a training room at a time.
Okay.
And I was absorbing all of their energy. And so I felt that frequency drop. Now that the government's changed again, the interesting thing is my business took off once again. And it was a frequency. It was almost like this wave of optimism swept across the planet. My clients' businesses almost turned around overnight. So there has been this wave, and I think there's been a very low vibration, but it feels like this new hope and optimism for a better future is coming through.
Mm-hmm.
And people are starting to feel it.
And accordingly to my belief, my personal way to see things, when you are on the low, it comes a high, like natural, it won't stay there forever. So it's when we feel the pressure. Right now, I do feel pressure. As an empath, I probably feel more than people around me, they feel. But definitely there is a pressure. And we are before elections here in Ireland as well. And that gets very intense throughout those periods. And America is like, I mean, yeah, we are not there, but funny enough, we relate ourselves so much to what's going on there.
Mm. When you mentioned empath, when I first got into personal development, I heard about being empathetic. And then I started to use scientific reports. So in my early days in coaching, it was a lot about intuition and guesswork. But I don't always believe my own intuition. Sometimes I think my intuition is wrong. And before I make a decision, I want some facts to back it up because I want to operate from both my left brain and my right brain. And I discovered a piece of technology, and it was called an emotional quotient assessment, EQ. And what it would do, it would measure emotional intelligence in 5 key areas: self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, social awareness, social regulation. And I started to use it with a lot of my clients. And what I noticed is that for people who had very high levels of empathy, the high levels of empathy stopped working for them and it started to work against them. That empathy had turned them into an empath where they started to absorb all other people's emotions. And
I
it really stood
I
out
can
to my
100%
clients
relate to that.
who were in
And I
sales.
had the impression that this episode is going to be a coaching session for me, which I don't really mind because I am all in. But yes, I 100%. And I think in the because you mentioned areas, I think in the business side is not serving me well at all.
Mm.
And I'm just after making a big mistake hiring someone, and then I heard you were like preparing for the podcast. I heard your video on YouTube, how easy it is to make a mistake when you hire someone with your emotions.
So easy. So
And
easy.
I lost money, I lost time, and I lost progress of my business because I choose with my emotions.
When we buy a motor vehicle, let's say we buy a new car, the industry statistics show that people will spend about 6 months in the buying cycle. So they'll go to the car yard, they'll look online, they'll test drive different models, and it takes them about 6 months to spend $100,000. And it's a significant purchase. If you're going to borrow $100,000, you want to make sure you get the right vehicle.
Yes.
So as humans, we will spend 6 months buying a motor vehicle. But when it comes to hiring somebody in a business, statistics show us that the hiring decision is made within 5 minutes. Some people will make the hiring decision in the first 60 seconds based on a feeling. And that feeling could be, oh my gosh, you live in Ireland. You're from Limerick City. So am I. Oh my gosh, this is awesome. We're going to get along fantastic. And all of a sudden, you're going to pay them $100,000 and your due diligence took 60 seconds.
Yeah. And that's so
And that's
true.
when that empathy works against us. And there's a tipping point. What I learned was once empathy started to get above 85%, we started to become an empath. And it almost becomes debilitating because we start to do what's called emotional absorption.
Mm-hmm.
We're looking at people, and if you're NLP trained, we talk a lot about matching and mirroring. So I want to build rapport. I'm going to sit like you. I'm going to sound like you. I'm going to use the same words. And it's triggering off mirror neurons inside the brain. So whatever you're feeling, I'm feeling, but I'm absorbing it and we don't realize it. And so empaths are so good at building rapport, but they take on other people's emotions and they become confused. Is this mine?
Yes.
Or is it somebody else's? And specifically, once it gets over 85%, I've seen that we think other people's emotions are ours. And instead of going in a straight line, we start to deviate.
Yes,
And that's what I learned.
absolutely. And what would be your advice, if I can say, in that? Like, what tool would you use to bring that in a more like a medium line? or recalibrate yourself?
When I first did my very first coach training, I think it was 2008, and I was taught to coach from center. They said coach from center, and I thought, wow, that sounds fantastic. What center? And they said, the center of your being. I said, well, who am I being? I don't even know myself. Like, I don't know myself. I don't understand other people. How do I do that? And so I was always off track. And the first technology that I was introduced to was a DISC assessment. And I think for a lot of people, they've heard
Yes.
DISC.
I did. Yeah. I did myself. Yeah.
And for me, I fell in love with DISC. And today I have taken 2,148 leaders through their DISC assessments.
Go away. I'm trained. I have a certificate, and I never used it until I was listening to your last podcast launched with like someone else, and I was like, oh my God, this man is a genius. He uses science to assess his clients, coaching clients. And I said, that's the missing element in a lot of coaching practices, myself included, because I use emotions and like how I perceive through my own lenses the person in front of me. And yes, intuition absolutely plays a huge role. But I was kind of I was proud of myself that my intuition is so okay, so up there. And sometimes it's like, really? Not really?
I have a saying, trust in science. And for me, I didn't know who I was. And Forbes magazine recently reported that leaders, 85 to 95% of leaders claim that they're emotionally intelligent. But the data shows that only 10 to 15% actually are.
Yeah.
And that was me. I didn't know who I was. They're saying, coach from center of your being. I'm like, I don't even know who I'm being. And that was the first step, was the DISC, because the DISC brought to my attention 4 key things. First of all, it showed me how I approached problems and challenges. And this was a big conflict for me, because a lot of the times I felt like I had an angel on this shoulder and a devil on this one. For me, I'm competitive. I want to win. I want a challenge. I want to fight. I'm an Australian champion athlete. I'm a 3-time state champion athlete. I've competed at the extreme games. I want to win. And I've always felt that wiring. But that wiring got punished because people would say to me, Daniel, you're too competitive. Not everything's a competition. It's not win or lose with everybody else. You got to tame that down. So I had this superpower inside of me, and I was led to believe, because of conditioning, that it wasn't a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But the moment I did my DISC report, they said, this is your superpower. And within an instant, it just unleashed. I said, I'm letting the cat out of the bag. I'm going to give this. And as soon as I gave that to my customers, they said, Daniel, that's what we want. We want to unleash like that. So DISC will show you how you approach problems and challenges. It'll also show you how you attempt to influence people and contacts. And for me, I'm very persuasive. I like to use a lot of emotion.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got clients on the other end of the scale. Sometimes I ring up my clients and say, g'day, how you doing? How's the family? And they'll get straight down to business. And I'll say, hey, ask me how my family is. And they'll go, oh, I'm so sorry.
Oh.
But we just influence and persuade differently. I want to use emotions where other people just want to use logic. But I've got to be able to understand my style so I can adapt to others.
Yes.
The DISC also shows us the pace and the consistency. For many years, one of my friends' dads would call me the 90-day man. He'd say, look at Daniel. He'll go and do something for 90 days. He'll become the best of it in 90 days. He'll master it and he'll get bored.
Yeah.
Now,
yeah.
I didn't know how to control that. And what I learned through DISC was that was just my style. I like to get in, do things fast and get out because I experienced disengagement. And instead of thinking that's a weakness, I realized that's part of my strength.
Yes, exactly.
And then the fourth thing in DISC is it's about how you approach policy and compliance. I hate rules. I hate the rule book. I hate standard operating procedures. I don't want to look at that bloody book. Get it out of my face.
That's because you live your life on your own terms.
That's right. And for me, before I'd try to please people and say, give me the big book, give me all the details, and I'd burn out really fast because my style is just not attentive to detail.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of trying to defend that and become somebody that I wasn't, now I accept my hard wiring. This is how I approach problems, people, pace, and policy. This is who I am. If you want to work with me, excellent. If you don't, I'm not going to take it personally just because our style doesn't fit. And so that's how I got back on track. So whenever I have a little wobble, I come back to my disc and say, well, that's who I am. And that's how I
Okay,
behave.
so you have a reference. You have a reference that you trust is working. I like that. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I
It-
like
it-
and
it gives
that's
you a bit of
science. Like
confidence.
it's objective. And I think that's very important.
One of the things with emotional intelligence, and DISC at its heart is part of emotional intelligence, because with our D style, the emotion that we feel is anger. And some of it show anger externally, but others internalize it. And sometimes the person who expresses it, they express it and move on really quickly. But some people internalize anger and it eats away at the inside for years.
Yeah.
With our I style, it's about optimism. And for me, although I don't drink a lot of alcohol, I drink a lot of optimism and I get drunk on optimism. I get so excited of something new and it's going to work out. I'm going to make $1 million. And I do too much too soon.
Yes.
And at times I've got to control that.
Okay.
With the S style in DISC, it's about managing the emotion of sadness. And for me as a business person, I experiencing a lot of disappointment because I set big goals. And when I don't achieve a goal, I have this uncomfortable feeling. But it's sadness because of all the disappointment of setting and not achieving the goal. So now I can
can't believe
regulate.
that you are actually feeling that after all the years in real estate and all what you went through and all the training. You're human.
Yeah, and for this beauty mark as well, sadness. My youthful looks are disappearing. And then the C style is about fear. And all of us deal with fear differently. Some people deal with fear by over-analyzing things. They suffer paralysis via analysis, where some people just break the rules. And my name when I grew up was Daniel Danger. And they'd say he's dangerous. He just breaks all the rules. And for me, I have to learn to temper that, because I think for this low C style, when we're young, we think we've got so much time. And we make mistake after mistake, and we reframe it and say, it wasn't a mistake, it was learning. I didn't lose money, I just got an education. But then you get into your 40s and you realize that I shouldn't be repeating mistakes. I should be more attentive to detail. So with DISC, you start to realize how anger, optimism, sadness, and fear get in your way. And once you got that, you can come back onto the path. And that's what I loved about DISC.
Do you think that that can be applied to all area in your life when it comes to health, for example? Would you apply DISC from a health coaching perspective?
If you look at a D style and they're a high D eating, they eat like this. They just shovel everything in their mouth because everything they do is fast. Eating is a result. I've got to finish the plate first.
Okay.
Where a low D style will just take their time. They'll enjoy the journey of eating.
Yes, yeah.
When it comes to the I style and when it comes to health, one of the things that the I style wants is they want recognition. And oftentimes they do things for the wrong reason. They say yes because they might get a pat on the back. They say, I'll do this because this other person will like me.
Yes.
And when they say yes and they hope for recognition in return and they don't get it, they go down into the pit of despair. And how they respond to rejection is by attacking other people. I helped you and you didn't pay me back. I went out of my way to do something for you and you didn't say thank you. So in health, if we look at all health considered, how we eat food, how we interact with our emotions, how we deal with our mental health, DISC can reveal so many things. You know, if you look at somebody's DISC report, we tend to have two styles. We have a natural style and an adapted style.
Mm-hmm.
And that natural style is who we are when we're functioning in our comfort zone. And in terms of comfort zone, that's not a negative word. Comfort zone's a good word. You should understand who you are and you should try to operate from that. The second style we have in DISC is our adapted style. And so under moderate stress, tension, and fatigue, our behaviors might change, but we're often the last person to see it. Some people call it putting the mask on, putting the work face on, and we become a different person. And if we do that for too long, we get lost. And then we forget, what's my natural style?
Yes.
Am I masquerading? Am I pretending? Or is this the real me? And when we look at those two styles from DISC, you can actually look at it through a clinical lens. And you can start to see when people have things like bipolar, behavioral disorders, depression. It all shows up when you start to look at the DISC if you just look at it through a different lens.
Yes, that's very interesting. Thank you for that insight. It's brilliant. Thank you. I know you are called voice coach, voice coach. No, you had me. So tell me what a voice coach is doing and how do you help people?
I'm not the voice coach, but I have a voice coach.
Okay. Okay.
And I had trained in NLP and I had learned a linguistic model. And learning a linguistic model, we also learned about tonality and how much an impact tone has in a conversation. So I'd learned those things and I really never had any feedback. And I went and worked with Brian Tracy at his Speakers Academy. And I paid $10,000 for a 3-day course. And at the end of the 3-day course, Brian said to me, "You've got a great message, but your tone of voice is terrible." He said, "Australians, at the end of the sentences, everything goes up." And he said, what happens is when you make a statement, it sounds like a question and it confuses people. Now, trying to get that feedback from the marketplace, you can't get it. But from a professional like Brian Tracy, he nailed something that I hadn't seen. And so Brian told me about his experience. He was already a professional speaker, but he wasn't getting the results that he wanted. So he took a year off the professional speaking circuit. Now, in his lifetime, he had addressed 5 million people. And so it comes with authority. And he said, "Daniel, what I did was I took a year off and I hired a voice coach. And they taught me how to use my voice." And so he said, "Go and find a voice coach." So I put a message out on Facebook, and a friend of mine who's an actor said, "Let me introduce you to Bob Korf." And I said, "Who's Bob Korf?" He said, "He's Jesus." And I said, "Well, hey, I'm not asking to go to the church." He said, No. He said, "He's been in the hit Broadway show, Jesus Christ Superstar, and he played Jesus 1,000 times. He said he's the voice coach of Channing Tatum, Samuel Jackson, Oprah Winfrey, all the cast from the big movies like Star Wars, Pirates of the Caribbean." He said, "I'll introduce you." So he introduced me to Bob, and I started to work with Bob for a period of 7 years. And what I discovered in my first 90 days of voice coaching was I had been able to change my intonation pattern. And immediately I saw a $100,000 improvement in my sales.
Wow.
From changing my voice. Message was the same.
What did you learn? If you want to share, if you feel free to share.
Frequency.
Frequency.
It was all about frequency. And what Bob said, he said, people have to feel you. They have to feel your voice resonate inside of their chest cavity. So what people tend to do is when they talk, they're very nervous and they breathe from the top of their lungs and they're very breathy. And there's not a lot of power in the voice. But what he said was powerful people speak slow. They think about their words. And when they breathe from their belly. And when they speak, their voice resonates and people feel it. And so I followed his vocal program. My voice started to resonate and I got compliment after compliment. During COVID, I trained 15,000 people and I'd be at a live event and people would be writing in the chat box, "It's the voice of God. It's the voice of God." And I thought, wow, this is a great compliment.
Do you realize, are you aware that your voice changed? Do you sense that change? Okay. So it's a conscious change.
Yes, I have a video on YouTube that I keep hidden, but it's my reminder. And when I listen to it, because Australians, we've got a lot of flies in our country, so we've got to keep our mouth really closed, our lips closed, so the flies don't get in our mouth. So what happens is we speak out of our nose and we sound really nasally, really whiny. And the voice resonates in the navel cavity. And so it's really nasally.
Yes.
But Americans, they speak with a big mouth. They open the mouth all the way up. And so when I listen to my old recording and today, the old one makes me cringe. I go, oh my gosh. But at the same time, I feel so good because I've grown. And I was just in the Philippines and I trained 200 business leaders. And I did a hypnotic induction on stage. And people said to me, they said, Daniel, I could feel you inside of my head.
Wow. So you conducted the hypnosis, is it?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Hypnotized 200 business leaders.
Oh my God, I would love to be there. I totally get that. Your voice is from that category in my, I can categorize that in my head.
We've got to take people on a journey, and we've got to speed things up. We've got to slow things down. We've got to be theatrical, and we can do that with the voice. And we want to keep people moving. And in terms of the brain, what happens with the brain is that our brain aligns to an external frequency. And some people's voices can make you calm, or some people's voices can make you anxious. And I was recently at a mastermind in Thailand, and the speaker's voice was making me sick. It was so high-pitched. It was so fast that I couldn't keep up with it, that I started to feel anxious. And I said to my wife, I said, I feel like I'm going to be sick. This sound in my voice is too high-pitched. I've got to get out of here. Other people you listen to, and they're so slow and so monotone that you get bored out of your brain and you want to fall asleep.
Yes. So I relate very much to that from what I'm hearing from my clients as well, and myself and my partner at home, people around me. You can listen to some podcasts you can't listen to because you cannot resonate with the voice, or you can listen to someone to guided meditation, or you can't at all. And you lose the message because you can't relate to the voice 100%.
I remember I had a girlfriend when I was about 21, and her sister, who was much better looking than her, come into the bedroom and she said, "Where's that voice coming from?" I said, "That's me." And she went, "I like that voice." And we've got our voices are unique, and our voices play games on us. If I listen to my voice on a podcast recording, I'll listen to it and I'll go, "Is that really me?" But how we hear ourselves is very different to how other people hear us. So what we've got to do is we've got to let other people be the judge, not judge ourselves.
Why do you think, sorry, you just pointed something there and I want to grasp on that. Why do you think people are afraid to hearing themselves?
Yeah, there's actually studies into it. It's a phenomenon that we can't hear our voice accurately. And I think it probably comes from when we've tried to do a voice recording for the voicemail on our telephone. We try to say it one way and we hear it another way, but how other people hear it's totally different. I think what we have to learn to do is we have to learn to like the sound of our own voice. So when I was growing up as an athlete, my brother and I were very disciplined that when we would go out onto the river, we would watch ourselves wakeboard and do tricks over and over and again. And we would look at each trick frame by frame. So essentially what we're doing is we're magnifying, we're amplifying one little mistake. Now, we're amplifying that mistake so we can fix it, but we're also becoming overly attentive to our limitation. And it can feel very frustrating, but you're looking at it so closely. If you think about it, We watch the nightly news once. It comes on at 6:00. We watch it once. But before we put a video out there, before we put a podcast out there into the world, we listen to it, we edit it, we go over and over, and we say, "Oh my gosh, I did a lip kiss, and I snorted, and I coughed, and I breathed." Nobody else hears it, but we obsess about it, and it's just being overly attentive. And it comes back to what we call is critical thinking. And sometimes people are not attentive to their voice, so it never creates a problem.
Yes.
But some people are over attentive, and it creates more problems inside of their head than in reality.
Yeah,
So I think
totally.
if we're editing things and we're hearing our voice over and over again, that's a problem. But you know who's got some good advice is Johnny Depp. When he was in that court case with Amber Heard, somebody asked him about watching his own movies, and he laughed and said, "I don't watch my own movies. I'm an author, and I love to write books. I've written about 21 books, and sometimes I write the book and I send it to publishing, and then somebody says, 'Oh, you wrote this on page 54,' and I go, 'I got no idea.' And because I've written so many books, sometimes I just don't go back and read them because that period of my life is finished. I've done all the research, I've done all the study, I've put everything that I want in one place. And the reason why I write books is because of the same logic as Albert Einstein. Albert Einstein said that I'll never store something in my brain that can be found in a book.
In a book. Okay.
So what I said on my journey was every time I go down the rabbit hole and study, recently I read 1,000 different scientific articles. I say, what I'm going to do to remember all of this, I'm going to write a book, I'm going to put it into a book. I'm really writing the book for myself, and if other people enjoy it, they'll get benefit. So anytime in the future, if I have to look for something, I can always go back to my book and I just mark it. Okay, I studied this, and this is the answer. Or I tell people.
Yes, exactly. I love the perspective. Yeah, I love it. So I know one of your goals, you and your wife, is to coach 100,000 people for a better health. Is it? Am I right?
Yes. Yes.
How do you want to achieve that? What's the plan in achieving that?
Here in Taiwan, we have a major sleeping problem. We have 24 million residents on the island, just a small island, 24 million in the population, and we consume 1.5 billion sleeping tablets per year.
Okay.
And
I am
we
going to
partner with-
investigate that in Ireland because my feeling is that we are not very far.
We're consuming way too many pills, and we partner with local hospitals, and they tell us all the time, they say, "Daniel, people come here for sleep, anxiety, and depression. And they've taken all of these pills. They can't sleep better. They've still got this anxiety, and now they're feeling depressed." And we see that. And we also see it in the younger generation. Taiwan has one of the highest rates of youth suicide. I know that in the United Kingdom, 500 children are sent to psychotherapy help every single day. And so the system's broken. There's good people working in the system, but the system's broken. 97% of people who are experiencing stress, anxiety, and depression don't get help. They don't get help. Only 3% do. And so we've experienced this. My wife in 2010 was involved in an accident on an aircraft. And I got the telephone call at 4:00 in the morning. "Daniel, this is the duty controller. Would you please come down to the landside hospital? Your wife's had an accident on the aircraft." And I've received that call at 4:00 in the morning. And my wife fractured her knee in 5 places. For 2.5 years, she was in reconstructive surgery and rehabilitation. She almost miscarried 3 times. She lost her job, she lost her income, and both of us had to start over again. And we had a very strong support system, and we survived. But not a lot of people survived that. And And as business coaches, we find that our clients come to us because they want to be better in business.
Mhm.
But before they get better in business, they got to get their personal life sorted out.
It's so comforting. You have no idea how comforting is to hear that from someone who is in business for 20 odd years, because I sense that from the day one when I start coaching. And my first reason was I want people who are in business to get better health. And probably at some point I will return to that message, like amplifying that, because people don't realize that they are not their business. They are themselves and they do the business if themselves, the being, is okay.
There's a mental health, there's a physical health epidemic around the world. We're not getting healthier, we're getting sicker. We know we're getting sicker, but everybody says, I want better health. I've never met somebody that said, I want worse health. There's always a new level to health. I know for me, I definitely had a vaccine injury during COVID. The first vaccine that I got in the arm, within about an hour, my heart went and just squeezed. And I went, "Oop." And that night I had the weirdest dreams of my life. It was like I was injected with some form of alien DNA. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but that's what it felt like to me. And for the next 6 months, I totally lost my power. I was fit. I was healthy. I was going to the gym every week, twice a week with my personal trainer, every other day walking. And I couldn't do one push-up anymore. But I was afraid to talk about it. I didn't want to speak publicly about it. I didn't want to post on social media because people are getting cancelled everywhere. I didn't want to say too much to my family because I'm an expatriate and I didn't want them to worry about me. And then I got the second vaccine and the same thing. My heart almost seized up. And again, I couldn't even do a push-up. And it took me about a year to recover. And then I realized that I wasn't the only person. You know, sometimes as coaches, we don't want to show any flaws. But then I learned so many people had gone through that. My brother had gone through the exact same thing. And so coming out of this COVID period, I think we all realize just how important health is to us. We've got to be physically fit. We have to be emotionally fit. We have to be mentally, emotionally, physically, but we also need to be spiritually fit. And I believe that in the first 7 months of our life, things happen and there's reasons why we lose our spirituality. But the new God of the world is not the God that we used to know. It's the dollar. And people worship the dollar and they've lost their spirituality. They've lost their faith. They've lost their morals. But they're looking for a way to get it back.
Wow, that's profound. And I think I know now what brought us together. Tell me, how do you explain that to a person who is driven by the money, not by the spiritual? And because I think are very powerful beings in the spiritual coaching, if I can call it spiritual, driven by the spiritual, but they don't match. They don't speak the same language. They don't speak the language what speaks for people from business, and that's where the message gets lost.
I've done a lot of research in the area, and it's very easy to categorize it. When we look at people, we look at their behaviors. So we say that's DISC. We look at their motivators, and we look at what are their passions. And then we've got to look at what coaching is. So what coaching offers is what we call an attraction brand. So if you're a personal trainer, if you're a hands-on therapist or a chiropractor, the reason why people come to you is because they want better physical health. If you go and get some Botox, if you get your lips done, if you get your eyebrows done, this is looking better on the outside. So there's some people who just want a change in their appearance. And we call that attraction, but they want to improve just the outside. When we look at personal development and education, we look at a mental transformation. So if you buy a book, listen to a podcast, you want to get better mentally. If you go to university, you want to get better mentally. You want to become smarter. And that's a transformation mentally.
Mhm.
If you want to learn how to sell, how to speak, how to coach, those three things are a change in your mental ability. Because when you learn NLP, it makes you think differently.
Mhm.
When you learn hypnosis, it makes you think differently. When you learn to negotiate, you think differently. The third transformation, which is not as popular at the start of the journey, it's something that happens at the end of the line. When all those other things don't work, when the Botox doesn't give you confidence, when the eye tattoos fade and they don't give you confidence anymore, when the hair falls out and the hair plugs don't work and you've lost your confidence, now you look for a transformation from within. And that we call spiritual. It's not spiritual in the sense we're talking about dolls or chants, but spiritual is about a change in your being.
Mhm.
It's a change of your entire personality, and it's changing you on the inside. And they're the three transformations: physical, mental, and spiritual. And for a lot of coaches, the disappointing thing is we know we can change people's life, but they've got to work on themselves. But the work on yourself comes along with the acceptance of you're not where you are or you're not where you want to be.
Mm.
And most people would prefer to live in denial than actually to admit that. And I learned that. I had a gentleman say to me, he said, "Daniel, I love what you do. I'd love to join your program, but I can't." And I said, "Well, what's holding you back?" He said, "If I join your program, then I have to admit that my life's not where I want it to be. And I just can't face that reality."
Yeah,
And so for coaches, we feel that all the time.
exactly. Yeah.
But once people have that transformation from within, everything else comes into alignment. Their physical health comes into alignment because they respect their mind, they respect their body, they respect their soul. Mentally, they want to learn more because they want to become more.
I was attending a functional medicine conference in the weekend, and for me was a surprise, a positive surprise to see how they actually married together in the same event the consciousness with the nutrition. And so it was for the first time, and I attended good few events, but was the first time when I saw science-backed evidence looking at the consciousness and how people with cancer are healed, going remission, because the consciousness changes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's difficult. If we go back to the start of our conversation, Forbes magazine said that 85 to 95% of people claim to be emotionally intelligent,
Mm.
but only 10 to 15% are. And if you don't know who you are, you don't understand your limitations. We have a saying in Australia that sounds like this: "My shit doesn't stink."
I'm going to borrow that.
And if we think about it, all of us, our nose is about an inch above our mouth. You'll be the last person to smell your bad breath when everybody else in the room does. And that's awareness. You could have put perfume on this morning. You could have sprayed it 5, 6, 7 times, but you won't be able to smell it after a couple of hours.
Yes, exactly. Yeah,
But
yeah.
somebody will walk past and go, "My gosh, what's that perfume? It smells amazing." And you'll think to yourself, "I can't smell it." And that's awareness. So everything starts with awareness. What I like to say in emotional intelligence is if you can't name it, you can't tame it.
Damn it. Yeah.
And my big breakthrough with our AI technology, I was confronted with something that I could have never accepted. When we started to use this AI technology and look deeper into ourselves, we started to have a look at Enneagram personalities. And when I first looked at my Enneagram type was the perfectionist. Now, if somebody said I was a perfectionist, I would have gone to war with them. I'm Daniel Danger. I'm a high D on disc. I'm a low C style. I could not be a perfectionist. I break the rules. But I was caught in that disc bubble. And Enneagram is a different science. And as I learned, because I wanted to have an open mind, I was confronted. I didn't like what I was told, and I was going to fight for my limitation. I went through and I started to understand the perfectionist. Now, the perfectionist personality is developed in our imprint period, specifically for people who are punished for making mistakes. My God, that's me. My wife said, "What do you mean that's me?" I said, well, at age 11, I was diagnosed with linear sequential learning disability. I went to therapy for 5 years for them to try to fix me. They poked me, they prodded me, they did x-rays, they twisted my neck this way, they wanted to give me pills. And I went to therapy for 5 years. And every time I made a mistake, the teachers punished me. Every time I made a mistake at home, I got punished. And then what happened, because of stimulus response, I quickly learned that every time I made a mistake, that I was going to be punished. So I lived in fear of making a mistake, and I was always on alert, ready for the punishment. Now, as you develop this perfectionistic personality, once you finish school, you then go into the workplace. So the boss punishes you for making mistakes. But once you become your own business owner, who does the punishment?
Yourself.
Well, somebody's got to do it. And the way that I would do it is I would do it with self-harm. And I had been in this pattern of self-harm for 25 or 30 years, and it was outside of my conscious awareness. It started with hitting and harming myself. Eventually, it led to me staying up till 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock and 4 o'clock in the morning and working myself until I broke. That was a form of punishment. And I saw this pattern and I looked at this and I went, oh my gosh, I am a perfectionist. I'm putting these unrealistic standards on myself, standards that I'd put on no other person on the planet. And when the benchmark's down here and I'm here, I still beat myself up and punish myself for the shortfall. And that was the self-harm.
Okay.
And it was a big breakthrough because in that given moment, I could name that thing that was holding me back. And if you can't name it, you can't tame it.
Yeah.
I didn't need therapy. I just got the awareness and I said, oh my gosh, that's my pattern. And immediately it stopped. For 4 years, it's never happened again.
Okay. Yeah.
And so if we can name it, we can tame it. And it comes into regulation.
Regulation.
And
Okay.
most of the time, I believe that people have very good regulation habits. But you can't use that strength until you figure out that one thing that's holding you back.
Okay. That's very smart. Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That was my question. Like, what's next after you identified what's going on? Okay, what you are doing to fix that or to improve that?
Comes back to what you were talking about before was empathy. We have a lot of empathy for other people, but most of the times we don't have a lot of empathy for ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we're all honest with ourselves, inside here, we say things to ourselves that we would never say to another human being.
Oh, yeah.
We talk down to ourselves. We give ourselves all the reasons why we can't have what we want.
Mm,
But we would never say that to another human.
absolutely.
If somebody wanted to start a business, we'd say, go for it. But if we say, I'm going to start a business, you'll say, you're not smart enough. You're not good looking enough. You're not experienced enough. Now's not the right time.
That's amazing.
And so these things come back to empathy. We have empathy for others. And if we had as much empathy for ourselves as we have for other people, we'd actually treat ourselves fairly. We wouldn't look down on ourselves. We wouldn't talk down to ourselves.
Mm. Thank you so much for such a beautiful sharing and such an empowering sharing. Now, you started to mention there about an AI tool, and I know you use it. Tell us a little bit about the context, and then let's go into it, my own voice. We are in for a treat, people, so keep listening.
So in 2010, I was doing some coach training and I was given a profiling tool. One was called a meta programs and values inventory, and there was 19 questions. And then there was another one called a coaching values inventory, and it was 250 questions. And I would ask these questions to my clients one after another. And after an hour, I felt like I'd been walking in the Sahara Desert. I was so dehydrated. And I think my clients were very patient with me because they wanted a result, but they'd get bored about answering these 250 questions. After that, I learned about DISC and many other sciences. And then during the pandemic, because the world went into a totally different direction, I came across a group of doctors and scientists, and they said, Daniel, what you're doing is phenomenal. Did you know that there's a better way? And I said, what do you mean? They said, using the science that you do, you don't have to do paper-based assessments. You don't have to do online assessments anymore. You can simply do it through your voice. I said, get out of town. What do you mean? And they said, let me show you. And they said, speak into this microphone for 90 seconds. I spoke in there for 90 seconds. I read a script. I didn't answer any questions. I just read a script. And then they popped out a 8-page report. And in this 8-page report, it showed me my stress type. It showed me my Enneagram personality. And it showed me the 7 energy centers in my body, the 7 chakras. They told me exactly what caused me to be stressed. They showed me my Enneagram personality. They told me that I was a perfectionist and I wanted to fight them straight away. And then they showed me my energy centers. And I was so blown away because after doing more than 10 or 15 years of personal development, they just gave me a totally new level of insight about myself.
Wow.
And so we started to use this technology in the pandemic. We've had groups of leaders of up to 200 people analyzing their voice at a time. And in a 90-second voice recording, straight from your mobile phone, we can analyze 1,440 emotional triggers. We can identify 14,000 health and genetic issues just by listening to the voice.
Yes, because voice is such a powerful, like voice is us. Voice is part of our identity.
Yeah, it is. It takes 100 different muscles to make a speech sound. To make a speech sound is the most complex thing for a human to do. Mammals can't do it. They make sounds, but they don't produce voice sounds. And so when you speak, you've got to engage 100 different muscles. You've got to engage your autonomic nervous system, your parasympathetic nervous system, your vagal nerves. You basically engage all the networks in your body. And inside of that are your brainwave functions. And our AI technology and our algorithm and the big data ties the brain waves and the vibrations to different emotions and personality traits. And you've already completed your 90-second voice recording, and I've got your 8-page report here in front of me.
Okay, so walk us through the report, or whatever aspects do you want to share. I am all open.
Open? Okay, well, let's dive deep. So the first thing we look at is stress. And in the Czech Republic recently, they just released a statistic that mental health problems cost the European economy 170 billion euros per year.
Wow.
And all of us experience stress. But what stresses me might not stress you. And we look at 3 different types of stress. We look at logical stress, we look at emotional stress, and then we have a look at compound stress.
Mm-hmm.
Logical things has everything to do with our career, our health, our future, our health. Also about money. Our emotional stress relates to everything with a heartbeat. Our mothers, our fathers, our brothers, our sisters, our children, our work colleagues. And then accumulated stress is that type of stress where we just keep pushing things under the rug. We push things out of our awareness and say, I'll come back to that later on. But it builds up and it builds up. So they're the 3 types of stress. And the type of stress that most impacts you is logical stress.
Mm.
So for you, you're very logic, and I'm sure you love to study. And at times you can just keep reading, absorbing information until the head's full, but you try to cram more in there.
How No, you didn't know me before. So first of all, I was after a weekend with the functional medicine and I felt that science poured into my brain. And second, I'm doing a diploma in learning and development. So, and I'm juggling in all those. Yes, I do. Yes, I love learning.
For you, work is very important, and you won't lose sleep over your clients, but you'll lose sleep over your work. Did I complete my to-do list today? Did I do all the things that I said I'd do? And if there's one thing off the list, it's hard to wind down. Also for you, you don't struggle for other people. And we'll get to your personality type in a moment. But for you, it's a struggle for yourself. It's making sure that you can become the very best version of yourself. And you put too much pressure on yourself to move the needle forward. And sometimes, although you learn, probably feels like a punishment. The more you learn, the more you realize that you don't know. And learning can often become more stressful than pleasurable.
100%. No, 1,000% accurate.
Over the past couple of months, have you had any health concerns at all? Okay.
Yeah.
Below the waist. With logical stress, we'll also have health concerns. And when we have a look at your chakras later on, your root chakra is underactive. So is your menstrual cycle irregular?
It started to be irregular. I blamed perimenopause. And probably I'm at the start of the perimenopause. Yes, I'm aware of that.
Okay, good. Because when I look at the type of stress you have, logical stress, and when I look at your energy centers, there's very little energy in your root chakra, and the energy drops when women are premenopausal.
Mm-hmm.
So when I looked at this, I went, okay, it's coming.
It's coming, yeah, exactly. I'm very aware of that, yes, yeah.
Good. Okay, so logical stress impacts you. And the signs and symptoms for logical stress is the overthinking.
I am the queen of the overthinking. I invented the overthinking.
And that's the sign. As soon as you see it begin, the overthinking and the overanalysis, that's when you got to put your foot on the brake.
Hmm.
That's the sign. And if you can learn to put your foot on the brake and then just coast for a little bit and relax, you'll enjoy yourself a lot more. But for somebody who's as driven as you, who wants to learn so much, it's hard to take time off.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do take time off, you come up with more $1 million ideas, and then you want to get straight back into the study or the learning.
Do you know me?
So,
did you connect with me in another dimension?
So people with logical stress, they feel that they can't stop working. But humans, we can perform at our best for about 8 hours per day. And then statistically, our performance drops off by 50% every hour. So you get to the 9th hour, you've produced about 30 minutes worth of work. You get to the 10th hour, that hour has produced about 15 minutes of good results. And after that, it gets down to about 7 and about to nothing.
Mm-hmm.
What we should learn to do is we should learn to take a 36-hour sabbatical. And the research shows that if you turn off at 6 o'clock Saturday night and you don't turn back on till 6 o'clock Monday morning, your productivity will be 400% higher on Monday. The brain is like a battery. It gets depleted. And like your iPhone, you can try to keep using it and plug the power in, but eventually it just overheats. The best thing you can do is to take more time off, and you'll actually perform better, and your health will get better as well. Because as we get into your energy centers, you're definitely struggling with chronic fatigue
Mm-hmm.
and exhaustion.
You really caught me in the middle of it. Like I wasn't aware of. But what happens this week, and I'm very connected to my body. I'm questioning myself every day why I'm that tired. I cannot have enough sleep. And it's not a good quality sleep, by the way. I'm able to recognize that as well. But I feel like something is going on. I am more aware that chronic fatigue syndrome, if I can call it. Yeah, definitely.
Could you describe it as like running on empty?
Hmm. Yes, that's what I said yesterday. My battery is on low, very low.
When we look at your root chakra, we look at balanced, imbalanced, underactive. You're in the risk category. And when we are fatigued for too long, when we're running on empty for too long, we can risk experiencing what's called adrenal fatigue.
Mm-hmm.
The energy, the adrenaline has just been depleted in the body, and it can take anywhere from 2 to 3 years to recover from adrenal fatigue. And you're going to be at risk in that category, but your immune system's also compromised. So your thymus won't be active and it won't be preparing your body to fight off injury and illness.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
But
Not that
we'll
I
come back
need.
to that.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So I get a bit excited. I connect all the dots. We've started with stress, logical stress. Now, what's really interesting is your stress type doesn't really align with your personality type. Your personality type is the peacemaker.
Mm-hmm.
So a peacemaker really wants power and control. I want personal power. I want to be in control of my life. Does that make sense so far?
Yeah.
You're very connected to your body. And you said that a moment ago. You're very connected to your body. But one superpower you have is you're a really good relator of people. You don't get along with just some people. You've got the ability to get along with all people. And what you do really well, you bring people together and then you get them working in harmony. You're the person to solve all the problems and getting all the people to talk through their problems and bring them together. And one of the emotions for you that you've got to learn to control is internalized anger and frustration. The peacemaker doesn't show it externally, but it bottles up on the inside. It impacts the liver, and then it starts to calcify the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because with not expressing, I'll put it like this. Throughout your life, you've probably been betrayed a lot.
Yes.
And you hold on to that resent. And that eventually calcifies the heart. And we call it a cold heart. And when we look at your energy centers, you'll see that your heart chakra is overactive and it's constantly working really hard to try to clear out.
Because that was my goal for the year, being aware and working on myself to open the heart chakra. So there is a reason because of that, but I developed fatigue because of that.
Yep. So we say that your personality style is the same as Queen Elizabeth II. Great peacemaker. And the Dalai Lama also has the same peacemaker personality trait. So when people are around you, they feel very peaceful.
Mm-hmm.
They also recognize that you have a very strong love for people. And doing what you're doing with your therapies and your coaching, this is the perfect career path for you. It matches. And this is why I said before, your stress type doesn't align with your personality type. And that's a good thing.
Oh, really? Because I wanted to tell you, give you a little bit of insight there. I was in a moment of that type of stress. I'm going through 2-3 weeks of challenges in business, making mistakes and whatever. So I was in a period of stress.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for you, what's really good is that you're so good with people, but people don't bring you stress. Because if we're a peacemaker, but we also have emotional stress, we then carry all the stress.
Okay, yes.
So for me, in my early days, being a perfectionist and also having emotional stress, I would take home my clients' problems.
Mm-hmm.
And I could feel it. I couldn't sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning because my client didn't do their affirmations. I couldn't go to sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning because my client didn't do their tasking. They didn't do their goal setting. And I would lose sleep over their problems. But now my stress style has changed to logical stress. I don't lose sleep over my customers. So this is a really good blend for you.
Oh, thank you. It's good to hear.
You're also very good at catering to the needs of other people.
Mhm.
And also, one of the really lovely things about the peacemaker is the peacemaker has a fatalistic nature.
Oh, it does.
And
Oh,
so
yes.
God will, we'll see what happens.
Doesn't serve me in business though.
It's a lovely quality. And with all peacemakers, the peacemaker, one of the disciplines and areas of development is they've got to stop neglecting themselves.
Mhm.
They spend all their time fixing everybody else, but they forget the self-care.
Mm.
And you'll see the importance of that when we look at your energy centers.
Yes.
Can you see yourself as the peacemaker?
Yeah.
Now, the third part of the puzzle is when we have a look at energy centers. And Snow White had 7 dwarves. There's 7 days in the week. There's 7 colors on the rainbow. And everybody has 7 energy centers. And these are clusters of energy inside the body. And like you said before, energy is everything.
Mhm.
And without energy or without life force or without chi, we don't exist. And so the goal of looking at our energy centers is to have a look at how energy flows through the body and to see if there's any energetic imbalances. And what happens is if we have energetic imbalances and we don't attend to them, they show up in uglier ways. And eventually, the energetic imbalances show up in physical problems. So, about 100 days ago, I looked at a client's energy centers, and his throat chakra and his heart chakra were overactive. When we have an overactive heart and throat chakra, we develop gum problems and we develop ringing in the ear.
Mhm.
50 days after his report, he called me. He said, I've got this ringing in my ear and it won't stop. Yesterday, he called me and he said, my gums swollen up. I'm going to the dentist. And I said, you're going to have root canal therapy. He messaged me 2 hours later and said, how did you know? I said, I just looked at your report. Your throat chakra, your heart chakra is out of balance, which means you're going to have ringing ears and gum problems. And he said, when did we do that report? And I said, 100 days ago. So what happens is when these energetic imbalances show up in the energetic body, if they're not attended to, they become physical.
Mhm. Totally, 100%.
And we all know it. If we go through 4 or 5 major changes at a time, statistically, within 2 years, we'll develop cancer.
Mm.
And what we're going to see next year, 2025, we're going to see the cancer rates go through the roof because of what happened during the pandemic.
Yes.
People lost their jobs. People lost their dreams. They lost family members. They were locked down. And nobody has really recovered mentally, emotionally, or spiritually from that. They've got back into life, but they've never done the self-care or the repair. And
Yeah.
it's going to come out in uglier ways.
Yes, that's so eye-opening because I totally relate to that, totally believe in it. But it's very interesting to see other people who are bringing that to light. Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to see it. So our body needs energy. And when we look at these 7 chakras, the root chakra is about stability and security. And it also gives us clues into our life. Now, normally when we have an out of balanced root chakra, the time in our mother's womb or the first few years of our life was very disruptive.
Mhm.
What was happening in the first few years of your life, or even was your mother's pregnancy challenging?
As far as I know, it was. And my birth was very challenging. So that's all I know. I could recollect from her. But yes, yeah.
Mhm. So these things tend to stay in the energetic body. And this technology, it's also measuring your energy in the final trimester of your mother's womb
Mhm.
because we carry that energy. And what I can see here when I look at your root chakra It's too low. So the root cause here is a disruptive time in the mother's womb. Secondly, what was the relationship with your father?
Non-existent to, I would say, damaging.
So the root chakra also gives us insights into our
Not
relationship
physical
with our father.
damaging, emotional damaging. Yeah, thankfully, yes, yeah.
The specific emotional damage is when our father is not present, and then what happens is we grow up in a world where we fear our own safety and security,
Mm-hmm,
and the world becomes a very scary place.
mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. When you don't want to wake up in the morning because the world is a scary place.
Yeah, we can see that here. Now, what ends up happening is these imbalances end up impacting our physical health. So there's three things that are of a concern here at the moment: is the throat chakra is too high, the heart chakra is too high, and the root chakra is too low. So when you combine these three things, you're going to find exhaustion. You're going to find that it's really hard to fight off injury and illness. So when you get sick, it's going to take longer for you to recover,
Mm-hmm.
and it just leads to a declining physical health. Does that make sense?
Yeah, does make a lot of sense.
Now, the root cause of those, and you can tell me if this is true for you or not, when we have an overactive throat chakra, oftentimes we have a very authoritarian upbringing. Parents are too critical, too harsh on us.
100% me. Yeah, I became very aware of that since I'm working more on myself on genuine level, and probably in the last 12 months I adjusted a lot into that because I'm aware, but totally 100%. That's the way how I brought up my child, and as a single mother, I felt that I am right. It's my duty to be that, and I stepped into very easy, like very comfortable to be the authority. Yeah.
So these things show up in our energetic body as traumas.
Mm-hmm.
So this is what we see is the trauma in the energetic body. The other thing is for you, you've got the peacemaker personality, and what leads to constant exhaustion, but what's going to hurt your heart chakra is the constant self-sacrifice.
100%. 100%.
And then the other layer, when you bring those three together, it's that disruptive childhood.
Mm-hmm. I had to learn how to befriend that, not to look at it like from a victim perspective, because for years I was stepping and I embraced the victim of my childhood. And now I am feeling I am in a very good space, thankfully, from learning. Like I learned a lot and I became who I am because of my childhood. So I am grateful towards it. But it was years of suffering, really.
And you can see it here in those chakras, and albeit that's the bad news. The good news is what you said just there. I want to give you a different thought pattern. What you've developed through this is you've developed your spirituality. You have become very spiritual. Your connection with your divine, your God, whatever you call it, your energy source, you are attuned to the spiritual world. Your relationship with God, or what you believe is energy, is very strong. Would that be fair to say?
Oh, it was there all the time. It was there. I sensed first when I was 6. It was very interesting experience I shared with my listeners in one of the episodes. I was in a church, in an Orthodox church, where I don't know if you are aware of. It's very ritual based, and you don't have. I was in a place where I should feel God and connected to God, and I felt all these weird people saying weird things, repeating the same words without no sense to me, and I was like, can we just not talk? Like that was the feeling of 6 years old in front of the altar. And I was like, okay, I don't want to be part of this. I want my God to hear me and to hear God. And all my life, I followed that. Yeah, I became emotional.
I can see it here because your crown chakra, which is about wisdom and spirituality, is balanced. Your third eye chakra, which is about intuition and insight, is balanced. And when those two are combined, you'll always have a very strong connection with the divine. At the start of a conversation, I was talking about the world is not connected with God anymore. They look at the dollar as the God. And there's specific reasons for that. You're a mother. And do you remember when your child was born, they have two soft spots on the head?
Yeah.
Now, when those soft spots are open, this child is still connected energetically to the divine.
Mm-hmm.
But at around about ages 7 to 9 months, those soft spots, they call it the frontal, close up. And that's when we lose our connection to the divine. And then people live their
That's
whole
fascinating.
life.
I knew anatomy and physiology, and of course I was like, when you're a mother, you definitely know all these things. I never connected to that before. Wow, that makes so much sense.
Closes it off. It cuts off that connection to the divine. And most people don't experience the divine until their time of death. And my grandfather, he was from Irish blood and he was Roman Catholic. And he knew he was going to hell. He knew he was going to purgatory because he'd been a bad boy. And on the lead up to his death, he was bringing the priest into the hospital, come and cleanse me of all my sins. He got remarried to my grandmother. He renewed his vows because he started to fear God. He had put God to the side most of his life, but now he feared death in the afterlife.
Yeah.
And this is how most people live. They go through the whole void and then go, oh my gosh, I've got no relationship. What's happening? So for you, although you've had those traumas, what's developed in you is a very strong spiritual side. And what I can see here is that you're going to be open, but you're not just a person of knowledge, you're a person of wisdom. And I think you'll find a lot of people say, you're so wise.
Mm.
How do you know that? And your response is probably just, I just do.
I just who I am, that's my answer. Like, that's me. But I don't take that in, and I want to say it publicly because it's important. I do not take that with gratitude. I don't take that easy, and okay, that's me, and I leave my ego to drive me. I take that with humbleness, if I can say that, and genuine humbleness, because I think it's a privilege to be in that way. And I don't think I didn't do anything. That's what was given to me. And I am very grateful that I can bring that to the world.
Before I mentioned about trusting my own intuition, what happens is when our third eye chakra is out of balance, so is our intuition. And I'll give you an example. I dated a girl for many years, and she'd always say to me, my intuition tells me you're cheating on me. Your intuition tells me you're cheating on me. I'm going, my gosh, I'm like, what's wrong with your intuition? It's so off track. I said, I'm a loyal boyfriend. And eventually she told me so many times that I'd cheated on her, I went and did it. I said, well, I'm just going to prove you're right. But I think we've all had that experience where sometimes our intuition lies to us.
Mm-hmm.
It tells us things that aren't real. And that happens specifically when that third eye chakra is out of balance.
Yes.
So what we feel is that when it's balanced, we know our intuition is spot on. But when it's out of balance, it tells us stories that are often fear-based.
Mm-hmm.
So your crown chakra, your third eye chakra, your solar plexus chakra, your sacral chakra are all balanced. And so for you, even though you've got some of those health challenges, your vitality, your life force, your ambition is still high. You're still out there requiring more knowledge. You want to work constantly on your intelligence. And that's what happens when you have an active solar plexus chakra. You want to acquire more knowledge. Also, you're very good at expressing your own emotions, which you said before. let's go. Let's be vulnerable. And you're very comfortable. We can see that. You're very confident in who you are. You're enthusiastic. We can see that on the podcast. And you know your strengths and you know your limitations. None of this surprised you. It was just a confirmation of, I already know.
Yes.
And that's rare, because if we go back to that statistic, only 10 to 15% of people know who they are. You know your strengths, you know your limits, and that's why you're going to be the best coach in your area, because you know who you are. You are operating from center. You know who you are.
Yeah. Thank you. That's encouraging.
And it's a real gift, because we can't give what we don't have.
That's so
All of
wise.
these qualities that you have, all of your strengths, they're all the things that your clients want. It exists in you, so you can give it. What's the old saying? You can't pour from an empty cup. Your cup is so full. You're wise, you're aware, you've got a strong inner compass, you've got vitality, and you know who you are. They're the qualities of not just a good coach, they're the qualities of a great coach.
Oh, thank you so much. I take that with gratitude. Thank you. Coming from you, it's even more empowering.
My pleasure.
Like, I mean, yes, because
Well,
I mean, it's coming from you, it's coming from a person who studied for so long, put science, spirituality, and psychology together. And your experience as a businessman is like showing that you are what you are doing and you are believing in.
Thank you. And for all of us, we can learn how to do this. It's not something that somebody's born with. The science is there. And if you trust in science, the journey of self-improvement becomes enjoyable, and it's no longer about guesswork. Okay, that's the one limitation I've got to overcome. Well, that's simple now. I know what it is, because if you can't name it, you can't tame it.
Yes. And before I let you go, I want to give me what if I was your client and you had that profile in front of you, what would you advise your client to do, or me in that case?
What we provide for our clients is, we call it sound frequency immunotherapy. And so instead of doing talk therapy, what we do is we use our ears for a change. And so I have a team of doctors and scientists, and they create sound frequency therapy.
Oh.
And what the sound frequency does is it introduces healthy brain waves. And once you listen to those healthy brain waves, your brain aligns with the new frequency. And then what will happen is, over time, very quickly, at 15 minutes a day, your chakras will come into alignment and you'll activate self-healing. So that's what we do with our clients. We provide what's called vibrational medicine. And vibrational medicine has been around for thousands of years. It's just got really good now because we can do it through audio and through our mobile phones. So that's what I'd recommend.
So where people can find you if they resonated with what they heard us talking and they want to get in touch with you?
Come and visit me. My website's danieltolson.com. When you get there, on the top right-hand side, there'll be a little tab and it says Mind Report. Click on that. You can experience Mind Report. And there's also a series of free books that you can download as well.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. We will put that all in the description of the podcast. And thank you so much for taking your precious time and sharing your wisdom with our listeners here.
My pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you so much.